He had been away for weeks, traveling from one city to another, signing papers, attending meetings, and making deals. Business was never ending, and the world of money had its own rhythm, one he had learned to follow since he was a young man. But even in all the chaos, he never stopped thinking about home. There was something about the quiet of his own house, the smell of familiar walls, and the presence of someone who depended on him that always pulled him back. That morning, he woke up earlier than usual. Something inside him told him not to wait for the usual announcement, not to have the staff tell him when he was arriving. He wanted to see everything as it was, untouched by preparation, raw and real. Without telling anyone, he left his hotel and took the first available flight. The roads were calm, and the journey, though long, gave him time to think about how he had been absent from the most important things in his life. When he arrived at his mansion, the familiar gate stood tall and imposing, yet welcoming in a way only home can feel. The guard at the gate was surprised to see him, but he simply nodded, and the gates opened. He didn't rush inside. For a moment, he just stood there, taking in the sight of the sprawling gardens, the fountains, and the lights reflecting off the marble floors. Everything was as it should be, yet he felt a sense of tension he couldn't explain. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet, perhaps? The only sounds were the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. He walked slowly, his footsteps echoing in the large empty spaces. He expected to see his son sitting in the living room, maybe drawing or reading, waiting for him to return. But as he moved closer, he noticed something was off. There was a slight movement, but it wasn't coming from the usual place. His heart beat faster, a strange mix of anticipation and worry filling him. His son had been paralyzed for years, and the boy's world was limited in many ways. The thought of him being alone for even a moment filled him with guilt. He had missed so many milestones, so many small victories that only a parent can recognize. And yet, he had trusted the maid to be there, knowing she cared more than anyone could imagine. She had been with the boy through sleepless nights, doctor visits, therapy sessions, and moments of pure joy. She wasn't just a caretaker. She had become a part of the family in ways he had never acknowledged. Turning the corner, he finally saw them. And what he saw made him stop in his tracks. His son was not in his wheelchair. He was on the maid's back, holding on tightly, laughing in a way that made his eyes sparkle. The maid was moving slowly but confidently, making sure the boy was safe, her arms strong and steady. He had never seen anything like this. For a moment, he questioned what he was seeing. How was this possible? His son, who usually needed so much support, was enjoying a freedom he had never thought possible. He took a step closer, unsure if he should speak or just watch. The boy looked over his shoulder and laughed, a sound so pure and innocent that it made his chest ache. The maid smiled down at him, gently encouraging him, making sure he felt secure. There was a rhythm to their movement, a trust that had been built over years of care and attention. It was clear that this was not a simple act. It was a bond that went beyond words, one that the billionaire had never fully understood until this very moment. He watched as they moved across the room, the boy's laughter filling the space, echoing off the high ceilings. He realized he had been blind to the moments that truly mattered. He had focused on wealth, on success, on the numbers that defined his life. While the most valuable thing, his son's happiness, had been nurtured by someone else, and yet there was no resentment in him, only awe. He couldn't believe the strength, patience, and love it took to do what the maid was doing right now. As they continued, he noticed the little details. The way she adjusted her stance when the boy shifted, the way she spoke to him softly, making sure he knew everything was okay. The boy's hands gripped her shoulders, but there was no fear, only joy. He realized that this simple act, something that seemed ordinary in the moment, was extraordinary in its meaning. It represented freedom, trust, love, and resilience, all the things money could never buy. He thought back to the mornings when he had rushed to work, barely stopping to see his son awake, the evenings when he had been too tired to even ask how his son's day had gone. He had been a father in title only, missing the essence of what it meant to be present. And here was the maid, filling in the gaps he had left, giving his son a world he could enjoy despite his limitations. A part of him felt a pang of guilt, a deep awareness of all the time he had wasted, but alongside it was gratitude, overwhelming gratitude for the woman who had cared so selflessly. She had never asked for recognition or reward. She had never complained, even when the boy was difficult or tired. She had been there, always, and the love between her and his son was visible in every movement, every laugh, every glance. He didn't want to interrupt. He wanted to see more, to understand fully how much this woman had given. And as he watched, he saw the boy lean back slightly, trusting completely, knowing he was safe. The maid's face was calm, yet focused. There was a quiet strength in her, a strength that he had never recognized in the same way he did now. She was a silent hero in a house full of wealth, a person whose actions spoke louder than anything he could have done with all his money. The boy laughed again, and the sound brought tears to his eyes. He remembered the days before the accident, how active and full of life his son had been. He remembered the hopelessness he had felt when everything changed. And he realized that hope had been restored by the maid, not by him. She had found ways to give his son joy, to make him feel alive, to let him experience the world beyond his limitations. He slowly stepped forward, still not wanting to startle them. But he knew that he could no longer just watch. He needed to acknowledge this moment, to be part of it, to finally see his son fully, as he had always wanted to. He called out softly, just enough for them to hear, and the boy turned, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his father. The maid stopped, smiling gently, allowing the boy to wave, to show that he was happy, safe, and loved. It was a simple moment, yet it carried the weight of years. The billionaire felt a shift inside him, a change that he could not ignore. He realized that life was not about the deals, the contracts, or the titles. It was about these small, precious moments, about the people who shape our lives in ways money cannot measure. And he understood that his son had been given more than he could ever provide, not through wealth, but through love, patience, and dedication. For the first time in a long time, he sat down quietly, taking it all in. He watched the boy giggle, leaning forward on the maid's back, and he felt a profound sense of humility. Life had shown him a truth he could not ignore, that real strength and value were often hidden in plain sight, carried by those who give without asking, who love without conditions, and who act with courage and grace every single day. And as the sun filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room, he promised himself something. He would no longer be absent. He would no longer let the most important moments in life pass him by. He would learn from the maid's example, and he would do everything he could to be the father his son deserved that day. The house was filled with laughter, love, and a sense of connection that money could never buy. It was a simple beginning, but a powerful one, and the billionaire knew that nothing would ever be the same again. He had returned expecting the ordinary, but he found something extraordinary, a lesson in humanity, in care, and in the quiet, unstoppable power of love. The moment lingered, suspended in a strange mix of surprise and joy. He could hardly believe his eyes. His son, who had always struggled to move freely, was laughing and full of energy. It was the kind of laughter that came from pure happiness, not from toys or games, but from feeling safe and alive. The maid carried him effortlessly across the room, her movements calm, confident, and steady. She was careful with every step, every shift in balance, and it was clear that this was a routine she had perfected over time. He stepped closer, wanting to make his presence known, but afraid to disrupt the delicate balance they had. He watched how the maid adjusted her stance as his son moved, always making sure he wouldn't fall, always guiding him in the quietest, gentlest way. There was an invisible rhythm between them, a trust that had grown over years, and it was mesmerizing to see. He realized that this small act, something so ordinary to them, was extraordinary in meaning. It spoke of care, patience, and a bond that could not be broken by distance, money, or time. As they moved, the boy glanced over his shoulder and spotted him. His face lit up instantly, and he let out a giggle, turning slightly in the maid's arms. It was the purest expression of joy he had ever seen from his son, the kind of smile that could melt the hardest heart. The maid stopped for a moment, making sure her burden was balanced, and gave a small nod as if to say, "It's okay. Everything is fine." She was not afraid of him. In fact, she welcomed his presence, understanding that this was an important moment for everyone. He felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Shock, awe, and admiration all collided with guilt and a deep, aching gratitude. He had spent so much time away from home, chasing deals and contracts, believing that success was the measure of life, and yet here was the maid, with no title, no wealth, no recognition, showing a kind of dedication he had never matched. She had been there through all the difficult days, through tears, therapy sessions, and quiet nights when the house was empty. Except for the two of them, he slowly walked into the room, careful not to startle them. Every step made him more aware of the sound of laughter, of tiny hands gripping the maid's shoulders, and the calm determination in her eyes. There was something humbling about watching someone care so completely, without expectation. Someone who gave freely and fully. He realized that he had missed seeing this side of life, the moments that truly mattered, the ones that could not be bought or earned. As he watched, memories came flooding back. He remembered the early days after the accident, the fear, the uncertainty, the endless nights worrying about his son. He had tried to be present, but work and obligations always pulled him away. Doctor's appointments, therapies, and small victories had come and gone, and he had often been absent at the most critical moments. Yet the maid had been there every time, holding him when he cried, encouraging him when he doubted, and celebrating when he succeeded. The boy shifted slightly on her back, giggling again, and he felt his heart swell. There was a light in his son's eyes that he hadn't seen for a long time. It was a light that came from feeling loved, from feeling safe, from being able to experience life in ways he thought were impossible. The maid's presence had given him a freedom he had not known, a freedom that could not be measured by wealth, status, or privilege. It was raw, human, and beautiful. He wanted to reach out, to say something, but words felt inadequate. How could he express the mix of emotions he was feeling? Gratitude, awe, guilt, admiration, they all collided inside him, leaving him momentarily speechless. He realized that the maid had become more than a caregiver. She was a guardian, a teacher, and a source of joy. She had taught his son how to trust, how to embrace life despite limitations. And she had done it with no recognition, no fanfare, and no reward beyond the happiness she brought to a child. He took a seat nearby. Wanting to watch them closely, to see every detail, the maid carefully adjusted her grip as his son leaned forward, his laughter filling the room. Every movement was deliberate, every step a small act of love and protection. He watched how she communicated without words, how she anticipated his son's needs before he even realized them himself. There was a language in their actions, a silent understanding that had grown over years. It was beautiful to witness. For a long time, he simply observed. He let the moment unfold without interference, letting his son enjoy the freedom and joy he had created. It was the first time in years that he felt fully present in his own home, fully aware of the small miracles happening right in front of him. He realized that he had been chasing illusions of success while true life and true happiness had been unfolding in his own house, quietly and without notice. The maid moved slowly toward a soft carpet, lowering the boy gently to the ground. He expected him to immediately return to the wheelchair, but instead, he remained standing with her support, laughing and moving as best as he could. The sight was overwhelming. He had never seen his son so confident, so fearless, even if for a brief moment. It was a gift the maid had given him, one that he had taken for granted until now. He leaned forward, his voice finally finding strength. You're amazing," he said quietly, almost to himself. The maid looked up, surprised, but smiled gently. She had never sought praise, yet she understood its importance in this moment. She nodded slightly, acknowledging his words, but remaining humble. His son turned to him, eyes wide with excitement, and said, "Dad, look, I can do it." His small voice carried pride, and it struck him deeply. The father felt a lump in his throat. He had never realized how much joy could be found in such a simple act. He thought about all the times he had been absent, all the moments he had missed. He silently vowed that he would never make the same mistake again. From this moment forward, he would pay attention to what mattered most: his son, the people who truly cared for him, and the simple joys that could fill life with meaning. He watched as the maid continued to guide his son through gentle exercises, helping him stretch and move safely. It was more than care. It was encouragement, teaching, and love woven together. The boy's laughter never stopped, a sound that filled the room and warmed the heart. He realized that while he had given wealth and comfort, it was the maid who had given something far more valuable: the confidence to embrace life fully, despite limitations. Time seemed to slow as he observed them. Each small step, each movement, each smile was a reminder of what life was truly about. He thought about the world outside, the money, the deals, the endless demands, and realized that none of it mattered in comparison to this. The room was alive, not because of luxury or grandeur, but because of care, trust, and the pure joy of being together. Finally, he spoke again, this time directly to his son. I'm proud of you," he said softly. The boy's face lit up even more, and he leaned forward, wrapping his small arms around the maid for balance. "I like it, Dad. I like it," he exclaimed. His excitement was infectious, and the father couldn't help but smile. The maid looked at him, her expression calm but filled with quiet pride. She had given his son a gift that no amount of money could provide, and he now saw it clearly. He took a deep breath, realizing that this moment was just the beginning. There was so much to learn, so much to witness, and so much to appreciate. He had underestimated the strength, patience, and love that existed in his own home. The maid had not only cared for his son, but had created an environment where joy and confidence could flourish. She had shown him what it meant to truly care, and he felt a deep respect and admiration for her that he had never expressed before. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the room, he continued to watch them. Every laugh, every movement, every shared glance was a reminder of the beauty in everyday moments. He realized that he had been living in a world of illusions, chasing success, while real life, real love, and real joy had been happening quietly in his own home. And now he had the chance to be present, to participate, and to cherish it fully. By the time evening arrived, the room was filled with a calm sense of connection. The boy was tired but happy, the maid relaxed but attentive, and the father overwhelmed yet grateful. He knew that things would never be the same again. He had returned expecting ordinary moments, but he had found something extraordinary. He had found a lesson in love, patience, and humanity that money could never buy. That night, as he sat quietly in the living room, watching the maid tuck his son into bed, he reflected on everything he had witnessed. He felt a deep gratitude, not just for the joy he had seen, but for the reminder that life's true treasures are found in simple acts of care and love. He understood now that wealth could provide comfort, but it could never replace presence, attention, or the bond between a child and someone who truly cared. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he also knew that with love, patience, and understanding, anything was possible. The bond he had witnessed today, between his son and the maid, was unbreakable, and he felt honored to be a part of it. He finally understood what it meant to be present, what it meant to value people for who they are, not for what they do, and what it meant to truly care. The next morning, sunlight spilled gently across the room, casting long, soft shadows on the walls. The house was quieter than usual, not because it was empty, because everyone was moving in a rhythm that had been set long ago. The father had spent the night thinking, reflecting on everything he had seen the day before. Sleep had come reluctantly, his mind filled with images of his son laughing, clinging to the maid's back, and enjoying a freedom he had not imagined possible. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of care, of patience, of dedication. He rose quietly and walked to the living room. The maid was already there, organizing things, her movements calm and efficient. She did not look up immediately. Her focus was on the tasks at hand. Yet, there was a quiet confidence about her, sense that she knew she was part of something important, even if the world did not always recognize it. She had been in the house for years, and her role was often overlooked. But he now realized that she held the foundation of his son's happiness in her hands. The boy appeared soon after. Rolling slowly in his wheelchair, his face bright with energy, he smiled when he saw his father and waved excitedly. "Good morning, Dad. Did you sleep well?" he asked, his voice carrying innocence and curiosity. The father smiled back, kneeling slightly to meet his son's eyes. "I slept. Thinking about you," he said softly. It was the first time in a long while that he had spoken so sincerely, without distractions, without the weight of business pressing on him. The boy's eyes sparkled. He had sensed a change in his father, a presence that had been absent before. There was warmth in the way he looked at him, a softness that had not been there in years. The father realized that presence alone could transform relationships, that listening, watching, and simply being there could mean more than any gift or reward. The maid approached, quietly assisting his son with breakfast. She moved with the same care and attention he had seen the day before. Her hands gentle but strong, her eyes always watching, always anticipating. He sat at the table with them, feeling a strange sense of humility. Wealth, he realized, was meaningless without connection. He had spent so much time building a life of material comfort, yet the true richness had been right in front of him, in the laughter and trust shared between his son and the maid. He thought of all the times he had missed milestones, all the little victories he had overlooked, and he felt a deep, personal responsibility to change. After breakfast, he decided to spend the day with his son. He wanted to understand more, to witness every detail, to learn how the maid had transformed ordinary moments into something extraordinary. The boy's eyes lit up at the idea, his excitement contagious. "Can we play today, Dad? Can you help me?" he asked, eager and trusting. The father nodded, taking the hand that had always been small, fragile, yet full of resilience. He felt a surge of love and determination. Today, he would begin to rebuild what had been absent for far too long. The maid smiled quietly, observing the interaction. She did not interfere, but she guided subtly, ensuring that her presence supported both of them. She understood the delicate balance. The father needed to step into this role fully, and the boy needed to feel independence and trust. It was a dance she had performed countless times, a dance of patience and foresight, and watching it unfold now, he finally appreciated its depth. They moved into the garden, where the boy had spent hours under the maid's supervision, learning to enjoy small freedoms despite his limitations. She had built ramps, adjusted pathways, and created spaces where he could move safely. Her dedication had made the outdoors accessible, filled with opportunity rather than obstacles. As the father watched, he realized that the maid had been more than a caretaker. She had been an architect of experience. Designing moments where joy could flourish, the boy insisted on showing his father something new he had learned. With the maid's guidance, he moved slowly, carefully, attempting a small balancing exercise. His father held his hand tightly, feeling the tremor of effort, the courage it took to push forward despite physical limitations. The boy laughed as he completed the exercise, and the father's heart swelled with pride. This was more than achievement, it was resilience, trust, and the love that had made it all possible. Throughout the morning, they explored every part of the garden. The father noticed the subtle ways the maid encouraged independence, letting the boy try on his own. Praising small victories, gently correcting mistakes without causing frustration. It was a lesson in humanity, a lesson he had never learned in the corporate boardrooms he had spent years navigating. Here, he saw the value of patience, of quiet support, and of allowing someone to grow while still feeling safe. By midday, they returned inside. The boy was tired but happy, and the father felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had spent hours simply being present, listening, observing, and participating in the life he had neglected. The maid assisted in helping him settle comfortably, ensuring he was supported but not restricted. Her skill was apparent in every movement, every word, and every glance. She had created a balance between freedom and safety that was rare. A true gift that he had taken for granted. He decided to speak with her directly. Wanting to express the depth of his gratitude, "You've done so much for him," he said softly. I never realized how much." "Thank you." She looked at him calmly, her expression serene. "He is my family," she replied simply. "I only do what is right." Her words were modest, but they carried a weight that struck him deeply. Here was someone who had given everything without expectation, and it humbled him in a way nothing else could. The afternoon passed in quiet conversation and shared activities. The father learned more about his son's routines, his preferences, and the little victories he had achieved while he was away. The maid shared insights with quiet wisdom, guiding him without overt instruction, allowing him to find his own path in caring for his son. It was a subtle mentorship, teaching him not just what to do, but how to truly engage with love and patience. He reflected on the irony of life. He had spent years chasing wealth, status, and recognition, believing these were the keys to a meaningful existence. And yet true meaning had been demonstrated in quiet moments, in laughter, in trust, and in the consistent, humble dedication of someone who cared deeply. He realized that no amount of money could replace these experiences, these relationships, or the joy he saw radiating from his son. Evening came, and the house was bathed in golden light. They returned indoors, the boy tired but content, and the father felt a quiet peace settle over him. He had witnessed love in action, resilience in the face of limitation, and the extraordinary impact of dedication without reward. The maid had not only cared for his son, she had nurtured him, encouraged him, and provided opportunities for growth that he, as a parent, had often overlooked. Before dinner, he took a moment alone with the maid. "I want you to know," he began, his voice sincere, "I see everything now. I see what you've done, how much you've given, and how much you've cared. I am grateful, more than I can say." She nodded quietly, understanding that words were enough for now. She had never sought recognition, but she accepted his gratitude with quiet dignity. In that moment, a mutual respect was formed, one that would shape their interactions and the life of the household going forward. As the night approached, he spent time with his son, listening to his stories, watching him play and sharing small, meaningful moments. It was a time of bonding, reflection, and healing. He realized that being present, truly present, was the greatest gift he could offer. The maid's influence had opened his eyes, showing him the depth of care and love that could exist beyond wealth and status. When the house finally settled into quiet, he remained awake for a while, thinking about everything he had witnessed. The maid's dedication had transformed his son's life, his own understanding, and the household as a whole. He felt a sense of humility, gratitude, and determination. From this day forward, he promised himself he would no longer take these moments for granted. He would engage fully, appreciate deeply, and cherish every experience with his son and with those who cared for him. The night was calm, filled with the quiet satisfaction of learning, observing, and understanding. He had returned expecting ordinary moments, yet he had found extraordinary lessons. He had witnessed resilience, care, and joy in their purest forms, and it had changed him. He understood now that true wealth was not in money, titles, or possessions, but in love, presence, human connection. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a sense of hope. The bond between his son and the maid had shown him what was possible, and he was determined to be part of it, to contribute, to nurture, and to participate in life in ways he had never done before. Tomorrow would bring new moments, new lessons, and new opportunities to grow together, and he welcomed them fully, ready to embrace life with open eyes and an open heart. The following morning, the mansion felt different. It was not just the sunlight streaming through the windows or the calm hush that hung in the hallways. It was something more subtle, something in the air that spoke of connection, understanding, and change. The father woke up with a quiet determination. He had seen enough over the past 2 days to know that life had been showing him truths he had ignored for years. Today, he wanted to engage more actively, to finally step fully into the role of a parent, and to honor the bond that had been nurtured so carefully between his son and the maid. He found them in the kitchen. The maid was preparing breakfast, her movements precise but unhurried, her eyes occasionally glancing at his son to make sure he was safe. The boy, rolling slowly in his wheelchair, hummed a little tune, his face already alive with the excitement of the new day. When he saw his father enter, he grinned broadly and waved. "Dad, come sit with us?" he called, his voice carrying enthusiasm that could brighten any morning. The father smiled, feeling a warmth he had almost forgotten, and joined them at the table. Breakfast was simple, yet it carried a weight far beyond food. There was conversation, laughter, and gentle guidance. He asked his son about his plans for the day, about small victories, about what he wanted to try next. The boy spoke eagerly, describing exercises, games, and little adventures that the maid had helped him achieve. The father listened, truly listened, and for the first time, he realized that listening itself was a powerful act of love. It was more valuable than any gift, more meaningful than any accomplishment he could have bought. The father's admiration for the maid grew with every passing moment. He watched her anticipate his son's movements, adjust her guidance, and provide reassurance without overt instruction. Her presence was steady, her support unwavering, and he realized the depth of her dedication. She had been more than a caretaker. She had been a teacher, a mentor, and a source of joy. She had created a safe space where his son could thrive, and he could only watch in awe, feeling both gratitude and humility. After a while, the boy wanted to try a new activity the maid had prepared, a small obstacle course indoors, designed to challenge balance and coordination. The father was hesitant at first, worried about safety, but the maid reassured him calmly. "He can do this. We'll all do it together," she said. Her confidence was steadying, and he trusted her guidance. Step by step, they moved through the course. The boy laughed and cheered with every successful attempt. The father held his hands carefully, helping when needed, and realized that the joy in these small moments was far more meaningful than any success he had achieved in the outside world. By midday, the father felt a profound connection to his son. He had been present in a way he never had before, fully engaged and genuinely attentive. He listened as his son described each movement, each small victory, and each lesson learned. The maid stayed close, supporting without intruding, allowing the father to bond naturally with his son. He realized that this balance was the true art of care-enabling growth while fostering independence, offering support while allowing freedom. Over lunch, the father spoke directly to the maid. "I don't know how to thank you enough," he said, his voice quiet but earnest. "You've given him so much, more than I ever could have imagined. I've been absent for too long, and I can see now how much you've done for him." The maid looked at him with calm understanding. "You are his father. Your presence matters too. It's never too late to be here for him." Her words struck him deeply. He realized that gratitude alone was not enough. He needed to act, to participate, and to commit fully to being present in his son's life. The afternoon passed with more exercises, laughter, and quiet reflection. The father practiced balance activities, guided his son through small challenges, and cheered each time he succeeded. The boy's confidence grew visibly. The father felt pride not only in his son, but also in the woman who had nurtured him so carefully. He began to understand that true love required effort, attention, and consistency. It was not enough to provide material comfort. One had to be fully present, emotionally and physically, to truly make a difference. Later, the father and son sat together in the garden, resting. The boy leaned against his father, exhausted but happy. "Dad, I like when we do this together," he said softly. The father hugged him gently, feeling a depth of emotion he had rarely experienced. "I like it too," he replied. "I promise, I'll always try to be here for you." The boy smiled, trusting, and the father realized that trust was built not just through words, but through consistent presence and care. The maid approached quietly, her expression gentle. She had been observing, guiding subtly, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. "He's learning from you too," she said softly. "Not just exercises, but presence, attention, and patience. You're showing him what love looks like." The father nodded, humbled by her words. He realized that learning from her example had been as important as teaching his son. Her patience, humility, and quiet dedication were lessons he could carry forward in every aspect of life. As the day moved into evening, the father decided to share a story with his son. He spoke about his own childhood, the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned, and the importance of trust, care, and love. The boy listened intently, his eyes wide with curiosity and understanding. The father realized that storytelling was a way to connect, to share wisdom, and to nurture a sense of security and belonging. The maid sat nearby, watching, her presence a quiet reminder of support and guidance. Dinner was a calm, warm affair. The father engaged fully, asking about his son's day, listening to stories, and celebrating small victories. The boy laughed freely, confident in the presence of both the father and the maid. The father noticed how much his son had grown in just a few days, not just physically, but emotionally and socially. The maid's guidance had laid the foundation, and his presence had begun to reinforce it. Together, they were building trust, confidence, and love. After dinner, the father took a moment to speak privately with the maid. "I want you to know," he said, "I will be present from now on. I will participate, guide, and support him every day. I see what you've done, and I want to continue it with you together." The maid smiled softly. "Actions matter more than words. Be here, truly be here, and you'll see the difference." Her words were simple, but profound. He understood that love was measured through presence, consistency, and care, not simply through intentions or promises. That night, as the boy slept peacefully, the father sat quietly in the living room. Reflecting on the journey of the past days, he had seen the extraordinary impact of the maid's dedication, the joy it had brought to his son, and the lessons it had taught him about humility, love, and presence. He realized that wealth, titles, and success were meaningless without human connection. True richness came from being present, nurturing trust, and creating an environment where love and confidence could flourish. He thought about the future. He would continue to be involved, how he would cherish every moment, and how he would honor the care and dedication of the maid. He understood that life's most valuable lessons were often taught quietly, through actions rather than words, and that the most meaningful relationships were built on trust, patience, and consistent care. The next morning, he woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The house was alive with laughter again, his son eager to explore and play, and the maid quietly guiding, ensuring safety and balance. He joined them with energy and attention, fully engaged in every moment. Together, they moved through exercises, games, and small challenges, celebrating every success and learning from every mistake. It was a rhythm of trust, connection, and joy that filled the house with warmth. By midday, the father felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had been present in a way he never had before, actively participating in his son's life, listening, guiding, and celebrating. He had witnessed the transformative power of care, patience, and consistent presence. The maid's dedication had shown him what true love looked like, and he was determined to continue learning from her example, ensuring that his son's growth, confidence, and happiness would never be compromised. Evening came, and the house settled into a gentle calm. The father sat beside his son, holding his hand and reflecting on the lessons of the day. The boy leaned against him, tired but happy, a small smile on his face. The father realized that the bond between them had deepened, strengthened by presence, trust, and shared experiences. He had learned that being a parent required effort, patience, and consistency, and he was ready to embrace it fully. Finally, he spoke softly to the maid. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "for everything. For your patience, your love, your guidance. I see it all now, and I will honor it by being here fully from now on." She nodded, a gentle smile on her face. "That's all anyone can ask," she replied. Her words carried quiet wisdom and a sense of completion. Together, they had created an environment where love, trust, and joy could thrive, and it was a foundation that would last a lifetime. That night, as he reflected on the journey, he realized that true wealth was not measured in money or status, but in the love, trust, and presence one shares with those who matter most. He had returned expecting ordinary moments, yet he had found extraordinary lessons, bonds, and joy. He had seen the power of dedication, patience, and care, and he had committed himself to being present, nurturing, and loving every day forward. The mansion, once a house of silence and distance, is now a home filled with laughter, connection, and hope. And so, life continued. The father, his son, and the maid moved forward together, each day filled with small victories, shared laughter, and quiet lessons. They had created something rare and precious, a home where love was active. Presence was constant, and joy was found in the simplest of moments. He understood now that this was the greatest wealth of all, a treasure that could never be taken, bought, or replaced. It was theirs to nurture, cherish, and protect for a lifetime.